I'm Thomas, and you're listening to the Racing podcast, where I am joined once again by no other than Andrew Vontz of the Choose the Hard Way podcast, but the not Choose the Hard Way newsletter. But give us your Substack, Andrew.
Yeah, please give my Substack a follow. You can go directly there, always thehardway.substack.com. Follow me on Instagram at hardwaypod. You can find links to everything that you need to blow your mind. You can find the link to the Choose the Hard Way podcast. You can also just search for that everywhere you listen and watch the Substack. And I also co-host the Beyond the Peloton podcast as well, if you love pro cycling on the road. And we do talk a little bit of gravel sometimes, Thomas. I'm excited to be here today. Great to see you again.
Yeah, super happy to have you. And actually, I realized that it seems like you guys, Spencer, and you over on Beyond the Peloton, talk a bit more gravel these days. I think you're pushing for it because you, I feel like, are really the man into gravel, following it, being stateside, which is of course very nice, especially if we want to do what we are going to do today, namely check in with the season at this late stage. It's by no means over, the 2025 gravel season, but it's coming to the final stages. Stuff is going to be decided. And Andrew, I asked you on here and I gave you some homework to do, because what
you did. You gave me homework. That's correct.
Namely, and that is how we are going to run things today. I asked you to share or prepare 3 observations from the season so far that you found interesting. And I also asked you to think about storylines that still excite you for the remainder of the season. I think let's start with the observations as you're the guest. Shoot, what do you have for me?
Well, Thomas, the first observation that I have is when you sent homework to prepare for this podcast, I felt like if I do a good job at this, do I actually enter gravel heaven? Yes,
that is the case.
Okay, great. I'm really excited to hear that. Okay.
You will also get one of these.
I want to go.
Go ahead, but just you will get also one of these stickers in your book. You know, I don't know if it's the same in the States, but here in like preschool and prep school, you will get stickers instead of grades. And I have a nice one prepared for you.
Oh, that's exciting. I didn't get any stickers when I graduated from any school. They just told me to please leave. And here I am today, racing gravel in the middle of my life, like many of you. I think the first observation that I have coming out of Schwamigan, which of course was a mountain bike race, yet a mountain bike race that we saw many people using drop bars for, right?
Yeah.
And much of Schwamigan was on grass. So I actually was exchanging messages with Payson McElveen last night, who I just had on Choose the Hard Way. We got into a lot of topics that Payson hasn't talked about before, which was really fun. And a topic that I had not heard him talk about was the rise of grass racing. At Schwamigan, as you may know, a good portion of that race, and in fact, the most critical and deciding sections, take place on thick grass. My question for Payson was, are we seeing the rise of grass as the next hot surface in gravel, which paradoxically does not contain grass? So that's a question I want to put out to you, Thomas, as I look out at my yard where I actually have built a small course that could be ridden on a gravel bike. I've been riding it on my Lauf Segla, the best gravel bike in the world. Special thanks to my sponsor, Lauf, for blessing me with the ability to ride this wonderful bike. I'm running 2.2 inch mountain bike tires, of course, on it, but I also swap it with the mountain bike a good chunk of the course in my yard is on grass. I've just mowed it really short. So that's not really on brand for Schwamigan, where the grass is tall and thick, yet they do mow the grass. Grass is everywhere. I feel like we could be having all kinds of grass races. What do you think?
For one, I think like everything is gravel and nothing is gravel. Especially, I guess that's a European perspective to have, but like we don't have the kind of gravel that is actually gravel. But then when we venture into off-road racing, that is not yet, or off-road riding, that is not yet mountain bike territory in terms of chunkiness and technicality and so on, then very often it's not a gravel, but it's like wood path and so on. And I think grass definitely is also part of gravel, even though it's not gravel. However, I don't think it's going to become a big trend because it's just not fun to ride on grass. I don't know what you think about it. Probably it's a very special kind of fun, maybe.
If you feel that it's not fun to ride and race on grass, then it's a good thing that you don't have a time machine taking you to Northern California in the mid 2010s, because that is the surface that much of the cyclocross racing in California takes place on. And you said something really interesting. You said everything is gravel, nothing is gravel. I believe it was Nietzsche who said that, actually. And I'm very curious to see if we do see a bit more grass in gravel's future, because it's not that fun to ride on. Also, there are many surfaces in gravel that are not that fun to ride on. And I don't want to spoil anything. I have another surface related observation for you, but before we go there, what have you got for me?
Man, just the surface talks make me think maybe we are getting into tennis territory here. Maybe we need to approach this. We will have grass specialists and hardcourt specialists, which would be pavement, and then maybe sand specialists. So yeah, maybe we should go there. And then it's only now in tennis. I was taught by a tennis coach friend of mine that nowadays this generation or the Federer generation was like where people used to be able to play on all surface types. So maybe that's where gravel is headed, specialization into all these surface types, and then we bring it back, and then there will be a super racer generation. We shall see.
Definitely. Yeah, so perhaps we move on to, I have more than 3 observations, but I'll give you a second one, and
hit
then
me with the next one.
We'll see where we go from here. This is something that struck me as I watched Gravel Worlds this year, not UCI Gravel Worlds, the real Gravel Worlds presented by Lauf in Lincoln, Nebraska.
The OG Gravel Worlds, as I dubbed it.
Yeah. Something, I don't know about you, something happened for me this year. Maybe it's because they had the wall-to-wall coverage. I really want to go do this race now. And in fact, I don't want to get people too excited. I know there are a lot of fans out there in the Lincoln area hoping that I might pull up to Gravel Worlds 2026 to do the ultra sprint distance. I think they have a 10-mile event that I might target. It just looks like a lot of fun. And it also is terrain that suits me because it's a lot of rollers where you can use your weight, if you're a larger human being as I am, to carry your momentum over the next hill. Something that I thought about when I was watching Gravel Worlds this year, and I'm sure you, like many of the listeners, checked out the awesome video that the Stable Cyclist did about this as part of his series with Chase Work and Drew Dillman. He had some fantastic footage of when the men's race hit that first minimum maintenance road.
Yes.
And the thought that I had when I watched this was, what an interesting sport we participate in, where carrying a paint stick is a mandatory part of participating in some of these events. And it seems that both at Gravel Worlds, at Unbound, and at a number of other races, there would be a way to route around these mud pits where a lot of riders break their bikes. People have traveled from all over the world, professional athletes, everyday people like you and me, who are outstanding in our own way, but are not professional athletes. People are spending a lot of time and money to get to these events. And I think there is this question of, do we want to have scraping mud off your bike be an integral and deciding factor in our sport? And I know that Drew and Chase didn't have that problem because they were on the Laufsegler, which has massive mud clearance. But a lot of other riders didn't have such a great day. I mean, if we look at Brendan Wirtz, U.S. national champion, out of the race basically with mechanicals after getting through those minimum maintenance roads. And you might say, hey, everybody knew this was coming. You can choose your tires and your equipment to suit the terrain. Should we perhaps just route around these mud pits? What do you think?
So I think what I'm hearing, it's more or less commonplace that organizers have like alternative routes prepared. And the talk is that was also the case at Gravel Worlds, actually. And then it was just at night, raining, not even that much. We got like the mud updates by Jason on Instagram. He was out there late at night showing us the mud situation in real time, and they opted to keep the original route. So yeah, I guess especially for the mass participation fields, I mean, I did this crazy race earlier this year. I think we talked since the hills in Italy, and it was so mud coated because actually, and that is going back to your grass point, is probably a counterpoint to this, because like there was a lot of grass in between vineyards and other grass sections. But by the time you as a normie arrived there, when hundreds or thousands even of other riders have gone through it, there is no grass left. It's mud. And if it has rained like it did there, then it's bad mud all the time. And so, yeah, that was like not too... This race, the hills, was not two MMRs that were super muddy, but it was like 130 of the 180 kilometers that were mud. So it was luckily not the peanut butter variety of mud, but a different type. I mean, look, mud is a reality of off-road racing. It's not necessarily the biggest fun to do this, especially like for a pro. It's not even that bad. I mean, it is bad in some sense in the moment, but they don't have to deal with all their equipment themselves, maybe. Or even if they have to deal with the equipment themselves, at least they don't have to pay it. I mean, the amounts of money you have to put into your bike if you take part in such a race can go into the thousands, but easily the hundreds. Yeah, I don't know. What is your take? Would you get rid of mud?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I think that if you have sections of road that are going to force riders to run for long periods of time and destroy their equipment, with the caveat that this only applies if you have the logistical ability and it's physically possible to just route around those sections, I would say, let's make this a bike race. Let's not make this a bike push race. So I would say, yeah, just route around them if possible and let people race their bikes. I would like that.
Yeah, I think I could get behind it. Especially again for the amateur and the mass participation field. But logistically, how this works, we would have to talk to a bike race organizer. Probably in the first place, you would have to just avoid certain types of sections then. Do you have another observation from this season?
I most certainly do. I think the next observation that I have, shortly before we got on this recording, I was watching a video from Pete Stetina, who I've also had on my podcast. You can check out that interview in the Choose the Hard Way archives. We had a really fun and interesting discussion, in particular about balancing some of the challenges I think a lot of us have who participate in the sport, which is it's very time consuming, it's logistically complex. And if you're a parent trying to balance that, and especially how do you spend time with your family and handle the pressure of going and racing if that's something you do when you go to these events, which not everybody does. But Pete was sharing that as he's preparing for U.S. Nationals, which I believe are this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend. They're in a new location. They're in the Driftless region of Minnesota, which, this is one of the things that I've found to be really fun about following gravel over the past decade plus. I started racing gravel, or at least I did Unbound 100 for the first time in 2013. I probably did some other events before that. But just getting exposed to these regions around the United States and around the world that I just really didn't know much about. And again, I'm now pretty interested in getting to this region of Minnesota. The riding looks fantastic. The thing that Pete shared, to get to my point here, is that at U.S. Nationals this year, they have rest stops about every 40 to 45 minutes on the course at the pace that the pros are going to be moving at. And people can have hand ups at those different feed zones. Watching Leadville this year, where we saw the incident in the pits, and also thinking about Unbound, it's feeling to me like it's time to have a separate pit area and like actual feed zone for the pros. I don't feel like it should be mixed in with amateurs doing the race. And I think we've seen it pretty significantly impact the outcome of races. And I actually think we need to start limiting the level of support, or having more stringent guidelines or some kind of code around what is actually acceptable, because across all of professional sport, teams and individuals that have greater resources have a competitive edge. And, we see this in the world tour with UAE, Visma. They just have access to more resources. They have better training camps. They have better logistics and ops execution within their team. And at races, they're more highly organized and have more support staff. Part of me thinks, hey, that's part of what happens when you're one of the best riders and you secure a better sponsorship or contract in gravel. You're going to have more people able to come out and support you, and your pit setup is going to be better. At the same time, it's just getting messy. People are getting hurt. I mean, we saw that at Leadville. The name of the athlete is escaping me, which is a shame because he's an extremely high-level athlete. The Schemo athlete that was up there in contention with
I want to say
Keegan at Leadville, right?
Not Cole, John Gaston.
Yes, John Gaston. It was really a shame to see that incident in the feed zone. I personally have not been to Leadville, but I talked to a number of people, including my friend Ben Davis, who's done Leadville a number of times, coaches athletes there. And athletes are moving through that specific feed zone at more than 20 miles an hour. And, I think it's a flat part of the course coming off a downhill.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure why you would have it there, but I don't know much about Leadville. Maybe it's only...
I mean, what I heard is that there was some confusion about the site on which you set it up, and then some people set up on the wrong side of the road, so people had to actually go, and that is with the people coming in the other direction. So yeah, that was messy, and actually I like your, I think I like your proposal of having separate normie and pro feed stations or so, to just physically separate this in various areas. Then how many of them you have is I feel like a different issue. I remember when we talked after the UCI Gravel World Championship last year with Paul, who of course Paul was like German gravel champion, former World Tour pro, the Germany's I would say premier gravel professional on the men's side. He told me how tough it was with like his limited, for a gravel pro, probably pretty decent support staff, but to compete with all the World Tour people there, like the Alpecin team in particular that supported MVDP, and that it was basically because there were so many feed stations, it was a huge disadvantage for everybody who didn't have a World Tour team support structure. Long story short, I think there is separating the two makes a lot of sense. Then how many you have, and do you need to make it so that like everybody who's on a big team, say Specialized or maybe Power Racing or whatnot, can have good support, and then the privateers not? Maybe there is a good sweet spot as well that could be found.
Yeah, and perhaps to counter my own argument, when I had Cam Jones on Choose the Hard Way to talk about his life and times and his background, really interesting background in forestry, actually gave me some really useful information about my pine trees that I'm looking at right now. A number of which are falling over. He explained to me why that was happening, which was awesome. And, you know, Cam was at Unbound with his parents. So like many of us, I don't know if you've ever done this, my mom and dad have handed me bottles and gels and what have you more times than I can count in the last 38 years that I've been racing bikes. And that's what Cam had. He had his mom and his dad. I'm sure he had people from Scott as well. But if you watch the Scott video about Cam's Unbound, it's his mom and dad in the pit.
Yeah, they set up. I mean, it was a big talking point.
Nonetheless, I think for the safety of the riders and just to further professionalize the events. And again, if people are going to take the time, the money, sponsors are going to send their athletes there, privateers are going to put their own money in. I feel like the sporting and professional thing is to do everything possible so these athletes can complete the race and not get taken out by a factor that really doesn't have anything to do with racing bikes. I mean, I get it. It's part of racing bikes, but there's a way to do this where we're not seeing 20% of the top 10 contenders ripping their derailleurs off at mile 5, or people running over senior citizens who are out on e-bikes or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
This doesn't need to be happening, in my view.
No, this I guess is absolutely correct. I also, maybe there was a slight hyperbole on your end with the number of top contenders, because surprisingly, like the top contenders managed, most of them, to find their way through this kind of stuff because they are well prepared and they plan for all eventualities and they have the team support. But I guess one thing that we can definitely agree on is organizers need to become much more mind and thoughtful about where they place feed stations and how they handle them, because I don't recall which podcast it was, but on one after Leadville as well, they talked about, look, it also has changed like so much how many people are going how fast through these aid stations. And I think they were also specifically talking about the one where the Gaston incident happened. And like back in the days, like a few people came from the opposite direction, but it was much more measured in terms of speed. And nowadays these races are ridden so differently is what they said there. that the logistics of the feed stations also need to adapt to the new reality that is off-road racing.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with all of that. And I did say I want to go do Gravel Worlds. I have a question for you, though, Thomas.
Which one? The OG one?
One of the distinguishing features of Gravel Worlds is that it's self-supported. And I know they do have community water at some point on the course. Again, I get it. It's in the spirit of the early days of the sport, I suppose, where everybody has to stop at Casey's General Store to buy food and water while they're out in the middle of the race. That's not what these athletes did at Gravel Worlds. But just this idea that part of the ethos is it's self-supported, carry everything that you need. I'm not sure that I need to watch elite athletes having to carry 7 liters of water to go do a race. I think I'd be okay with seeing them get bottle hand ups and gels. I think that'd be all right. What do you think? Well,
lucky pros, because they can do it so fast. They need to carry much less water than regular folk. I'm not against it, to be honest. Like, to me, like on some level, it even levels the playing field, much to the point we talked about with the feed stations and how better racers can have just more support. And if that is the ethos of the race, I mean, like if you follow ultra racing where basically everything is self-supported, it's a style, and it's like the rule of the competition. I don't mind it. I even like diversity in gravel. Like some races give you 50 feed stations, and then your strength becomes getting enough help out there and being really smart in organizing this. Not like, for instance, Drew Dillman back at this, what was it, Lufton 99ers or whatnot, where he did get the illegal feed or something. Like, yeah, being super prepared on this end can be a competitive edge. And maybe on some other days, it's like being able to carry 7 liters of water efficiently, maybe even turning it into an aero advantage rather than a disadvantage if you're smart about this. I don't mind it, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough.
Let me throw.
So when we get into trends that we see coming,
I have a few observations
what have you got?
I need to throw at you before we get there. I know you have a hard cut, so we need to keep it on time and rolling. Like, one observation this year, the break wins. I think we've seen this in many marquee races. Like, if there is a strong enough group that gets away early, it tends to win. It's something I discussed in various different recap episodes I did with the eventual winners or close followers themselves on here. Pretty much everybody agrees. The thing is, there is no such thing as domestiques in gravel 2025. And so if you get away and it's a strong enough group, it's very often the case that the chase group has like group 2 syndrome and doesn't catch it. And I guess that is an interesting dynamic. And I also hear, I don't know what you're hearing, but there is a lot of movement on the team's front. And I think that is a direct reaction also to this, because it becomes, especially in races like Unbound or Gravel Worlds, but many others as well, like the same happened at Trucker, for instance, the 360 version at least. It's just so hard to catch a break.
Yeah, this is something that Alexei Vermeulen talked about in the interview he recently did with Jonathan Lee on the Trainer Road podcast. And he made a distinction that I think is an important one. And Thomas, I think your general point, which is we're seeing breaks win at these races, I think that that's an apt observation, and results support that. At the same time, Alexei made this distinction between the split and the break. And he said splits are often happening in races, as we've seen going back to Gravel Worlds, where they hit the minimum maintenance road. There's some course feature there's a pinch point. It could be a creek crossing. It could be a minimum maintenance road. It could be, I'm not sure if you run into this much in Europe. In the United States, more times than I can count, when I've been doing a gravel race, you're at some point on the course and for whatever reason, they've just laid down fresh gravel maybe the week before the race. And when that happens, it means it's not compacted at all. And suddenly you're fishtailing all over the place. That happened to me. I'm not going to remember the name of the race. It was an event I did in Vermont. I was going like 40 miles an hour downhill, and then suddenly there's just this large section of road where they just had dumped gravel.
Yeah, horrible.
Things like that. What happens is people hit that, some part of the group makes it through, other people have trouble, and naturally a split happens, not through someone's effort, just the course splits the field. And if you don't make that split, then you're out of the race. So that's, to your point, you get a group one, group two. The actual break is a different deal. The break usually goes once that split has happened. And yeah, that's definitely what we're seeing. And you know, it happens in road racing as well, often to a lesser degree or for different reasons. In road racing, like at the Vuelta, for example, it's often, hey, only 10 guys can keep up with the pace and be in the front group on a climb. Everyone else is shelled. And then we see a break go from that split. In gravel, it's people trying to figure out how to turn their bike into a single speed after their derailleur gets ripped off in a minimum maintenance road mud pit or something like that.
Let me throw another observation your way and
do it.
Let's pick this one here. So Gravel Earth Series is now a force in global prestige gravel. And that specifically also includes the fact that the standing of the series among North Americans like yourself has drastically changed from last season to this season. Would you agree? How aware are you of the series this year?
Say more about that.
Say more about that? Well,
yeah.
I mean, just like last year, I think in the mind of most American gravel racers, they were loosely aware of Gravel Earth Series. Everybody knew Trucker, and that was what mattered. But nobody really cared about this series in the US. And then with all the races added to the series, say for instance, Lauf Gravel Worlds, Oregon Trail, Rebecca's Private Idaho, Core 4, and so on. All of a sudden it became so easy to compete in the series that people did. Like you can even see quite impressively, by the way, if you look at the standings, you have both Matt Beers and Sophia in the top 10 of the series, even though right now they both have only scores from 3 races, even though 4 would usually count. So in 3 races, I think Sophia won all 3 of them, and Matt had I think 2 wins and 1 second place at Trucker. So yeah, that is the thing. I think it suddenly matters even in the US, which before it mattered in Europe, and now they have a big footprint around the globe, which in this storyline, I think we in a podcast we too did earlier this year, I already said, like, look, that is something I'm curious about how it develops. And I when I had Payson on here, we talked a bit about like the future of gravel and where things are headed. And while I don't think there can only be one gravel series, but I also think there is consolidation happening, and I just find it interesting that the footprint changed so much in the North American market of the series, in at least my perception. And when I talk to the pros that I have on here, then it's also what they more or less confirm.
That's really interesting. I pulled up the Gravel Earth Series rankings before we got on this recording today. I had this feeling we might be gravel earthing. And looking at the results, Pete Stetina ranked above Matt Beers. Skylar Taylor from the U.S. ranked 10th. What else do we have from the U.S.? Griffin Easter ranked 27th. And then Keegan is on this list, but he is ranked 80th. And I didn't even know that some of the races you mentioned were part of the Gravel Earth Series. And it's cool to hear that they are, but I had no idea, for example, that Core 4 was part of Gravel Earth. And I think anything that gives these athletes more opportunities to compete and to knit together a couple of races in sequence so perhaps they have to travel a bit less is great. And Lifetime Grand Prix is awesome. What it's going to look like over time, I think, is definitely a question mark. And just the composition of races this year and the sequencing really shifted, and it left a lot of breathing room and space for the rest of the season for athletes to jump into these other races, which I think is awesome, because it's just not going to work over time if the only show in town is Lifetime Grand Prix,
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, look, how cool is it that we also see like Keegan. Well, early in the season, it didn't work out at Cape Epic the way he wanted to, but we saw him doing this race, and then later, just weeks ago, we saw him finally getting a rainbow jersey in the cross country marathon. And yeah, that is pretty cool. And by the way, on that note, to give you another observation, very simple one, but these Lifetime Grand Prix race selection / calendar changes really worked. The point that you made, but also like by cutting out these altitude races, we now have, with the 2 races to go, a real proper fight. And it's not clear that Sophia or Keegan are going to win it, by no means. Maybe Sophia is a bit better card.
Not at all.
I mean, Little Sugar suits them both over their closest competitors. But like you have on the men's side, Simon 1 point behind Keegan, and then Torbjorn Urd just another point behind. So that is a really tight battle, and both of them can also mountain bike. I don't know if they can. Little Sugar mountain
definitely.
bike.
And with Little Sugar and Big Sugar, the terrain is such an X factor, because people often get catastrophic flats at Little Sugar and Big Sugar. And we've seen athletes who look like they might win DNF at these races before. So, I mean, it could derail somebody's entire series if they are not planning on using that as the throwaway race, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, then there's the question of, I'm sure you've seen Big Sugar, Little Sugar, they're starting to promote the gravel rave on Instagram. And, you're from Germany, the home of Tresor, Berghain. I mean, we need to get some real underground club spirit, I think, more deeply in gravel, because they do a nice job, I'm sure, in Bentonville, but like we need to make it a little more hardcore, I think.
I can't speak to US gravel raves. I have no clue. So, but I take your word for it. But we're also already looking into the future. So hit me with the storylines, the narratives that keep you excited for the last few weeks of this season.
Yeah, I think what I'm really excited about, and Nationals this weekend will be interesting. We're seeing Keegan, probably the best extreme high altitude off-road racer in the entire world. This has been talked about a lot. I really would love to see what happened if we had Keegan against World Tour athletes at Leadville.
Yeah.
And, if you put Pog or Jonas at an altitude camp at 10,000 feet for a month going into that'd be pretty interesting. But it really does seem like Keegan has very unique physiology. And there's this question of, we saw Keegan Leadville win marathon, mountain bike world championship. win, and Schwamigan did not win. So I think a question mark is, can he carry this peak coming off of that massive block in 2 peak race efforts and carry that fitness into nationals this weekend, number one? And then number two, given that we know he also has little sugar, big sugar, I'm just thinking, can Keegan now win the national championship, take the Lifetime Grand Prix, and can he carry the fitness far enough to win world championships? I'm going to say yes. I think Keegan is going to be the next gravel world champion, even though I don't think the parkour particularly suits him this year. It's just not.
But is he doing worlds? I thought he isn't even doing gravel worlds.
I mean, never say never.
I mean, if he's doing it, that would be definitely interesting, because it's a perfect segue to the one narrative that I really find interesting, because especially on the men's side, where MVDP isn't defending his title because he quit his season early, I'm really curious if some gravel pro stands a chance to win it. Like if Keegan would actually be doing it, then he would be a name to add to my list. Like the guys that I have written down here is Mats Würz-Schmidt. I mean, obviously you could say, yeah, isn't he also like a World Tour pro in some sense? But this season he was really fully focused on gravel, doing super well, and he's just super, super strong. And I also still have, but with a big asterisk here, Paul Voss on this list. He probably, you missed that, but at like the last UCI race in the Pyrenees, the 66 Degrés Sud race, he broke his collarbone. Since then had successful surgery at the German equivalent of Herentals, essentially, and he thinks he's gonna ride the race, but let's see how this goes. And then on the women's side, I checked, I didn't get any official confirmation and didn't find any of whether or not Marianne Vos is going to title defend. But even though I think the name that I have big on my list from gravel origin side is Rosa Klöser. I mean, much like what you said about Keegan, she was like on fantastic form with like winning Core 4 Gravel Worlds, also winning the German Gravel Nationals. Let's see if she can carry that type of form into Gravel Worlds.
Yeah, now the thing that I'm really curious about is we've got Pauline Ferrand-Prévot wins the Tour de France, now going to Rwanda. Strong chance she wins world championships, I think. I was digging around to see, does she potentially show up at Gravel Worlds? And if she does, I mean, that's going to be a hard day for everyone else, right?
Yeah, true. Or would she ride for her sister?
Yeah. Great point.
I mean, yeah.
Either way, like dramatic storyline. And I don't know. I love what we see happening with Gravel World Championships. And this year, we're not going to have some former rainbow jersey winners that we would like to see there. And, you know, as we saw with Matthew van der Poel at XCO Mountain Bike World Championships, just didn't have it, right? Like not everyone can walk on water all the time. Yeah. But wow, it's going to be a heck of a race. And I just love seeing talent coming from every side of the sport to show up, even though, as you know, we discussed last year, Gravel World Championships, the UCI version leaves a lot to be desired, I think, to put it mildly, right? But I'm still excited for it.
Look, man, you don't have a lot of time left. Do you have another narrative that keeps you excited on your list?
Yeah, I've been joking around about this on Beyond the Peloton for more than 12 months now. I don't know about you, Thomas. I don't have time to go out and train and compete in 200-mile gravel races. I'm a dad. I've got young kids. I am starting up multiple businesses, doing podcasts. I guess I could, I could say like, hey, this is the highest priority in my life, but it's not. And just not something I'm super interested in doing right now.
Yeah.
So what do? I've talked about, hey, I want to focus on ultra sprint distance gravel racing. I like the idea of showing up at something like, I believe there's a 30 or 35 mile race at Little Sugar, maybe recruiting some former world tour riders to be domestiques for me and seeing what I can do. Am I a world tour level talent? No, I'm not. Could I potentially persuade some former world tour level talent to come out and ride on my behalf? Maybe I could. And then I started to notice on social media that there are a number of elite riders actually doing this. They're now showing up at the 10, the 15, the 25 mile ride. I'm not going to name names, but it's happening.
Yeah. There is even this term like they use, I think on the Bunk Bros podcast, the pro-mestique. Right. Because they are also coaches, many of them with their own coaching company, and I think they sometimes go to races with people they coach, and then they maybe they're pro-mestique. That is what you're referring to. But yeah, no, I'm not. Like actually, I prefer longer distances. Like just you can see me, listeners can't see me, but I'm like a 60 kilogram. That would be, what would that be in pounds? Like 120-ish pounds.
Right.
So like a 30-mile sprint race doesn't suit me. But I don't need to do 200 miles, like more than 300 kilometers. That is, yeah.
I think at some point in the coming year, I will do that. I had my friend Sam Huntington has got a great podcast called The Hill Climbers. He actually yesterday said, hey, why don't you come on down to Texas in October? We're going to do this 200-mile ride in Houston. And I said, good luck. But at some point in the coming year, I think I'll probably get out and just do a 200-miler with some friends. I probably won't train for it very much. I'll probably just pick a day and
just have an adventure.
Go eat a lot of gummy bears.
You have time for one more that I hit you with?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, I mean, it's probably a bit niche, and if you didn't even know all these races and racers participated in Gravel Earth, but there is a cool situation at the top of the manned side before the big finale at the Rancho Gravel race, which is the big finale. So think the Big Sugar. What Big Sugar is for Lifetime is Rancho for the Gravel Earth series. And there is, the points work differently. I will not bore you with the details, but we have like Piotr Havik in like the top spot of the series, having very well race selected and collected points, not in the top races, but job well done. And then in the second spot, we have Tobias Kongstad, of course, the Trucker 360 winner this year. And in third space, we have like shooting star, I would almost call him, Magnus Baklaris. And of course, Tobias and Magnus both are riding for PAR Racing. Now, if you know how PAR usually operates, they don't do team tactics, and that is what they say, but they also don't, because everybody has like their own bike sponsor, bonus clauses, and so on. But then on some level, I think easily there could be race situations where it makes sense for them to cooperate and gang up on Piotr, and seeing if and to what extent this happens actually keeps me in particular excited for this race, because the way the points work there, like if Tobias finishes ahead of Piotr, he takes over the first place. Magnus would need one guy in between him and Piotr to take the first step.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so nice little subplot.
That's interesting. It almost seems like PA Racing has they're kind of like Cobra Kai Dojo and the Karate Kid. They have a bit of a like bad guys kind of vibe, you know?
I think they did get like a image turnaround or boost at some point this year. At least if you follow what like the Holy Spirit of Gravel. The account and she, the person behind it, is doing and posting. I think they did get an image boost by what she said. And look, to me, I mean, after Trucker, I did like an episode with 3 of the 4 winners. All of them were power racers, but I think they have a cool vibe, and it's not like they really don't do a lot of team tactics. If you see the races that are actually watchable, and luckily this year these were a few more, they didn't destroy with the team tactics, and that likely is going to change next season, because what I'm hearing, but we need to quit, but it's something just to guide you out on a high note. What I'm hearing on the team front is very, very exciting, and a lot of stuff is going to happen.
So much suspense. I want to also say, when I was a journalist for a decade, and I guess I still am a journalist, I recently wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post about my time with Ozzy Osbourne, and I keep writing about a lot of stuff. It was what I was doing for a living full time for about a decade. One of the things I wrote about for a period of time was my editor from Rolling Stone went to WWE, the professional wrestling organization.
Nice.
I ended up getting hired to write about different professional wrestlers quite a bit. And what's interesting about pro wrestling as an entertainment product is that it has what are called heels, which are bad guys, people like Ric Flair, who they do the heel turn about. Yeah. And then you have good guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who I also met and wrote about. And you know what? I think gravel could use a little bit more of this dichotomy of heroes and heels. And it's part of what makes sport interesting is you need conflict, and you need really high tension, provocative storylines. We used to get it a little bit more, I think, back when we had, I'm remembering it was probably 4 or 5 years ago at this point, when Pete Stetna and I think Keegan were in a group at Steamboat, and I don't know, some group of people carried extra water, and they didn't stop at to fill their bottles. And then it seems so ridiculous now, but it became this huge controversy. I think we need something a little more high tension than that.
Yeah. I mean, of course we like it because that gives us stuff to talk about. I mean, like everybody is like framing Robert as the bad guy who never pulls, but that is in the man's field. I think what we have, like, probably not like a rivalry in the sense that they are talking badly about each other and dislike each other, but in the sense that it's a very interesting sportive rivalry. It's like the Rosa Klöser, Gerike G. Schreurs rivalry, because like what happened at Corfor and then basically repeated at Lauf Gravel Worlds, that's an interesting rivalry on a very high caliber.
Yeah, I mean, this could be Chael Sonnen versus John Jones level conflict for anybody who's a UFC fan. I mean, that's really what we need to take this sport to the next level. Let's stop with the hand holding and let's have some open conflict and some humor. I think
let's have someone make the heel turn, proper wrestling style. Why not? Go bad guy, go dark.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Thomas, I'm going to have to slide off here in a second. Anyone who's listening, if you'd like to be in touch, you can reach me at HardwayPod on Instagram. I'd love to hear your thoughts about gravel. Please follow my Substack. It's the Choose the Hard Way Substack. If you're a Substack subscriber, just type that in and look for it. And please subscribe to my podcast, Choose the Hard Way. And if you enjoy it, please hit 5 stars. And it's been great to be here today. Thanks for having me. I love to chop it up from continent to continent and talk about where the gravel may crumble and how we all may rise up.
Thanks so much for your time. Have a great day and talk to you soon.